In Valkyrie Profile, you never control a living hero. Every warrior at your side already died before the game's first battle, and it's up to you to decide, soul by soul, who's worthy of Valhalla, and who's just fuel to make you stronger. That's what Square Enix shipped in 1999, back when JRPGs ran on Chosen One Saves the World plots. And it worked. Valkyrie Profile became one of the most respected games the company has ever made, the kind of game critics still bring up as a landmark 25 years later. Except, somehow, across 5 games and 2.5 decades, Square Enix has never managed, or maybe never truly wanted, to give the saga the size it deserves. Today, how it was born, why it's one of the boldest ideas a Japanese studio ever had, and the real reason it keeps slipping through Square Enix's fingers. If you're new here, welcome to Turnology. This is where we dig deep into the history of RPGs and JRPGs, not just what happened, but the behind the scenes and the why. If that's your thing, grab a coffee and let's get into it. To understand Valkyrie Profile, we need to go back to 1995 when 3 people, programmers Yoshiharu Gotanda and Masaki Norimoto, and director Joe Asanuma, left a studio called Wolf Team to start their own company. They just helped create Tales of Phantasia, one of the RPGs that would go on to define an entire influential franchise. The name they picked for their new studio's basically an inside joke, Tri-Ace, a pun on the 3 aces who founded it. From there, Tri-Ace built a reputation for a very specific style: real-time action combat, deep skill systems, scores almost always composed by Motoi Sakuraba, and visual ambition a notch above the rest of the market, mostly through Square Enix, with rare exceptions like Resonance of Fate, published by Sega. That DNA shows up hardest in the Star Ocean series, and it's right after Star Ocean the second story, still considered the studio's creative peak, that Gotanda and Norimoto decide to do something completely different. What they wanted was to break away from the linear formula dominating Japanese RPGs, that fixed march from town to town. Instead, Valkyrie Profile hands you an entire world map from the start. You choose where to go, in what order, piecing the story together your own way. And that story is genuinely unlike anything the genre had done before. You play as Lenneth, a Valkyrie serving Odin, recruiting dead warriors, the Einherja, to fight in Ragnarok. Every Einherja you recruit carries their own tragic little story, told in flashback, almost like a short story tucked inside the game. It's practically an anthology of human tragedy stitched into Norse fantasy. In 1999, that was extraordinary. The ending also changes depending on how you respond to Odin's orders. Following your role leads to the standard ending, while questioning your fate unlocks a completely different path. A reactive narrative years before this kind of design became common in RPGs. Visually, Tri-Ace mixes hand-drawn 2D backgrounds with 3D characters, a hazy, cold, melancholic look that became the series' signature. In combat, each button triggers a different character, chaining into combos that feel more like a fighting game, capped off by character-specific finishers called Purify Weird Souls. Valkyrie Profile arrives in Japan on December 22, 1999, and in the West the next year. It sold over 700,000 copies, excellent for a brand new IP. And the love wasn't fleeting. In a 2006 Famitsu reader poll, Japanese fans ranked it among the 27 greatest games of all time. Not among the greatest RPGs, among the greatest games of all time. 7 years later, Square Enix gives the original a second life, Valkyrie Profile Lenneth, an enhanced PSP port with new CG cutscenes and later iOS and Android versions. Good enough to earn IGN's Best PSP RPG Award of 2006. But it's the direct sequel that delivers the most ironic chapter in this entire story. Also in 2006, Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria arrives on the PlayStation 2, a prequel built around an even bolder premise: 2 consciousnesses sharing a single body. Princess Alicia and the Valkyrie Silmeria trapped inside her. It's the same question of free will versus divine duty, now literally living within one person. Technically, it's a massive leap. A new graphics engine, cinematic side-view stages, and combat that expands into fully 3D arenas. Outlets at the time named Silmeria a serious contender for RPG of the Year, and it sold around 400,000 copies in Japan, an impressive result for a game released so late in the PlayStation 2's life. Then, by the end of 2006, IGN summed up Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria with a phrase that would end up defining the entire franchise. Best game no one played. It wasn't an insult, it was recognition. Recognition that the game was exceptional, but simply never reached the audience it deserved. 2 years later, in 2008, Tri-Ace tries something different. Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume, a tactical spin-off for the Nintendo DS set even further back in time. You play as Wilfred, a boy who blames the goddess Lenneth for his father's death and makes a pact of revenge to face her. The genre shift to grid-based tactics comes with the cruelest morality system the series has ever handed a player. Sacrifice your own allies for raw power, or preserve them and fight weaker. Multiple endings grow out of that choice alone. 230,000 copies sold in Japan. Solid for a niche spin-off, but once again, a number that undersells how well built the game actually is. Then silence. 8 years with nothing new. When Valkyrie finally returns in 2016, it's Valkyrie Anatomia: The Origin, a mobile gacha game with zero Tri-Ace involvement, arriving in the West only in 2019. You could tell there was a genuine desire to keep the flame alive. Except the service shut down in the West in 2020 and in Japan in 2021. One more chapter that flew under the radar for almost everyone outside the tightest circle of fans. And then came 2022. The year that on paper had everything it needed to become the franchise's big comeback. Square Enix announced Valkyrie Elysium, the first mainline console entry in 14 years, developed by Soleil without any involvement from Tri-Ace. Alongside the announcement, they also brought Valkyrie Profile Lenneth to PS4 and PS5, giving new players the chance to experience the series' origins before jumping into the new release. The Lenneth port was delayed and ultimately launched on December 22, 2022, the exact same day and month as the original Japanese release 23 years earlier. But the second half of that plan fell apart. Valkyrie Elysium replaced the series' strategic combat with a real-time action RPG system, much closer to Devil May Cry or Nier. The original composer returned for the soundtrack, so at least that part of the series survived. But the narrative depth, the anthology-style structure, and much of what defined Valkyrie Profile had all but disappeared. Critics and longtime fans largely rejected it. The game finished with a 66 on OpenCritic, with fewer than 1/3 of critics recommending it, by far the worst critical reception in the franchise's history. Combat was generally considered solid, but it sacrificed the very elements that made Valkyrie Profile feel like Valkyrie Profile. Sales were equally disappointing. Around 40,000 copies sold in its first week in Japan, compared to over 300,000 for each of the first 2 games. It became the weakest launch in the history of the franchise, at the exact moment it needed a success the most. You might be wondering, what about Tri-Ace? Why doesn't the studio that created all this just make the remake every fan wants? In 2015, Tri-Ace was bought by NetBro Japan, a mobile gaming company with zero connection to the console RPG tradition that built the studio's name. They kept making console games anyway, but right around the launch of Star Ocean: The Divine Force in 2022, reports surfaced of serious financial losses inside the company. Exactly the kind of news that doesn't convince anyone to fund a niche remake. In 2020, the creators themselves admitted they'd like to continue Valkyrie Profile, but the decision rests with Square Enix. Norimoto said he still wants to finish the story between the first game and Silmeria, but the project has never gotten the green light. It's not a lack of love for the work. The original creators are stuck inside a weakened company, and the final call sits with a publisher that has historically prioritized Final Fantasy above almost everything else. So will Square Enix bring this franchise back? Honestly, I wouldn't bet on it happening fast. After Elysium's failure, funding a brand new Valkyrie Profile game is a much harder pitch inside Square Enix after 2022, and publishers don't always draw the right lesson from a flop. Sometimes they conclude the IP is the problem, not the execution. What that failure proved, expensively, is that fans never wanted Valkyrie Profile reinvented. They wanted the original, done right for a new generation. That's exactly what Square Enix pulled off 1 year later with Star Ocean: The Second Story R. HD 2D visuals, the original cast back, the same composer reworking his own score, made by a studio full of former Tri-Ace talent. And it worked, on the exact same kind of nostalgic audience this franchise already has. Valkyrie Profile was never a quality problem. 5 games, most of them praised by critics and players alike, more than 2.2 million copies combined for an extremely niche IP. The problem was always timing, budget, and the right pitch landing at the right moment. So don't expect an announcement tomorrow, but if this franchise ever comes back, the playbook is already sitting there, proven. Square Enix just has to actually run it. Did you already know this franchise? Have you played any of these games? Let me know in the comments. If this video changed the way you see this franchise, hit like and subscribe, because we dig into forgotten RPGs practically every week. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.